What level of responsibility does a local church have for the things that are said by the people who write the songs that they sing? Welcome to the To Be the Church podcast, where we explore what it looks like to truly be the church in today's culture. I'm Tyler. Andrew Benner here. Cody is behind the controls. All right, guys, we have a question today. So this actually came from one of our members to one of our staff members, just talking about just the way that ministry plays out and things that we do in our gatherings here. So we've had episodes of this podcast before where we've discussed various angles of this, but I thought it would be worthy of bringing it up again. So here's the question. What responsibility does the church have for everything that's ever been said or sung by anyone we ever quote or sing? Okay, so like
That's a succinct way to put that question.
To break that down, we sing a song that comes out of New Life Church in Oklahoma. I don't think we actually have, but that's as an example. So if we sing a song that comes out of New Life Church, our member or person who attends here loves that song, is like, oh, I'm going to go find that, finds it on YouTube, ends up getting sucked into the algorithm, ends up hearing other New Life, Life Church, not New Life, sorry, Life Church songs, and then ends up on a Craig Groeschel message. Like, are we as a church, like, in any way responsible, like, for, not necessarily for what Craig Groeschel would say, but like, what is our level of responsibility or due diligence as it relates to that? Does that question make sense?
Yeah. So so it would be, and you ask it both with singing and with preaching.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So let's talk songs we sing, maybe preachers we quote, or, we don't do this here, but a lot of churches will utilize videos or resources from other churches, like in their like sermon bumpers or like, whatever. Like if somebody, Life Church has a lot of great resources. They're the ones who put out the Bible app. Like if somebody, I'm just using Life Church as a random example, but like if somebody uses a video and at the end of the video it says produced by Life Church or whatever.
Yeah.
Like this is actually like a more like pointed conversation if you talk about songs that come out of like a place like Bethel or Hillsong or Elevation, where it's like we obviously disagree with big elements of their theology and ecclesiology.
Yeah.
But they do have some songs, not all their songs, but some songs that have either come out of there that they've recorded that are biblically true, clear and compelling, and we've chosen to utilize them. And so, like, what responsibility does the church have for the rabbit hole of the attender?
Yeah, that's good.
I've definitely thought of that. At CW, I've told Max, like, I'd prefer not to play very many songs or that often songs from some of those churches that are pretty wacko. But I think I've always thought of, Tyler, I know what you've said before, that when it comes to like songwriting in the church, like it's pretty complex with like the multiple people that write on songs and who, maybe someone writes a song, but another person records it or performs it. And so like, it's not just as cut and dry as, oh, Bethel made this song and that's it, and like they're the only ones behind it. Because sometimes people that I think we would have no problem with maybe partner with a music leader from a place like that and write a song together. And so it's a little bit complex. So I do think it's best just to judge a song by the song, but I don't want my members to go down those rabbit trails and to stumble upon those things. I also feel like if someone's a member of my church, the way they're hearing the Bible preached week in and week out and the way they're being discipled, I think they're going to be able to have pretty good discernment. And if not, that's the job of us as elders to like help shepherd them and protect them from false teaching and those things. And I also just think like for some reason Bethel and Hillsong always get brought up, but like there are other people that we still feel comfortable singing their songs, even though like, they've totally deconstructed and walked away from the faith or, so I get that it's kind of a sticky wicket, to use Andrew's phrase, but like, as far as preaching goes, I don't think I'd quote people that are outside of orthodoxy. Maybe I disagree with them on like baptism if they're a Presbyterian or something like that, but I'm only going to quote guys that are pretty rock solid, because if I'm reading their commentary, like I'm pretty sure that they're really biblically faithful and And there's other guys that if it's going to be controversial at all, it's not worth it to quote it in a sermon.
What
you
if
know?
that Kenneth Copeland quote you had a couple weeks ago?
Well, Kenneth is often misunderstood. No.
Oh, dude. That's
But yeah,
good.
no, I get it. I mean, I think you think of the last few years, like the Tim Kellers of the world and stuff. He kind of became controversial a little bit towards the end of his life with his winsome approach to social issues, I guess. But again, like I don't feel as compelled. Like if I don't quote this person, the sermons. I mean, I don't even use that many quotes. Maybe occasionally I'll use one or two in a sermon, but not every week. So, yeah,
It is interesting that you bring up the, like we sing songs from people who don't believe in the faith at all anymore. I led a song at CW this past Sunday written by a guy who, now the song itself is beautiful truth. And the song even speaks to an eternal salvation that the songwriter no longer like ascribes to the faith, like, and so like, it doesn't devalue the song anymore or in any way, in my opinion. But
if they found that guy's X account, he's going to be saying some wacko stuff.
And he does. Yeah, totally.
And so it's like, it's the same risk, but
Yeah.
but most of our people wouldn't even detect that as a song that they don't love, but
So yeah, dude, thinking about this, there's so many different levels of it. First, I think there's a difference between like singing a song that maybe somebody from Bethel, what do you call that when they take part?
Performed it, yeah.
But performed it, or
recorded
they teamed up with other writers
Yeah,
and
co-write, yeah.
they co-wrote it or whatever. There's a difference between that and and like 80% of your songs being Bethel, right? And so we would judge a song here on, again, true, clear, and compelling. We always talk about that, and so that song has to be judged on its own there. But and so if it's doctrinally, if there's anything in it doctrinally that we go, no, that doesn't fly, then we don't even sing it, right? And no matter who it's from, so we want to judge it on that. And the song kind of can stand on its own, but I do think there's a difference as it relates to the rabbit hole between that being a big part of your song book, if you will, those kinds of songs or those kinds of tribes, if you will, versus like 1 out of 100 songs was like an elevation song that happened to be a good song. It's a true, clear, and compelling song. So I think there's a difference there as it relates to the rabbit hole. My second thought on it is like, I tend to be more, like you said, like the thing about guarding our people from the rabbit hole. I'd agree with that. I also tend to be like the internet, and like, we want to teach them to think, dude. We want to teach them and train them and disciple them to be Christians. And we're preaching the word, and the doctrine's going to be solid, and we're going to, have a solid statement of faith and build, shepherd our people well and bring in qualified elders and deacons and train them up and do those things. I think if you're doing that, like the world where it's like, I need to make sure that they have their bib strapped on every time they go on the internet because I don't want them suddenly to get sucked into the vortex of Bill Johnson. Like if they're there and they're like going down the rabbit hole and they're like, this Bill Johnson guy, like, I'm like, wait, are you a member? Like you're a member? Okay, well let's go. Like if they're at that sort of a point where they're that susceptible to stuff that's just nuts, right? We got to do a better job discipling. We better be preaching the word better, those kind of deals. So I tend to be a little bit less, it's not a laissez-faire thing. I do think we need to vet every song and those kind of things, but I'm a little less concerned about the rabbit hole because I think, like you said, of the work we're doing in preaching the word, in discipling people and shepherding them. And we are responsible to do that. Obviously that's our key responsibility there. And so we got to guard the doctrine and those kind of deals, but I'm less worried that like, they're going to get sucked into this rabbit hole and be so naive that I just think of the text, Ephesians 4, blown about by every wind of doctrine and human cunning, right? Are they there, or are they being equipped for works of service, building the body up in love, and in that way, So I don't want to be talking out of two sides of my mouth. Number one, I don't think you platform those places. Most of the songs that come out of those places are, theologically garbage anyway, so you're not going to sing them. But the rare one that you may utilize it because it's a compilation with other guys or whatever, or you got a Shane and Shane or somebody that you typically would agree with a lot more theologically as like a songwriter or guys, if that's one of them, and they team up with whoever the Bethel person is and they co-write something and it's sound, or whatever. If the lead, thing on that was Bethel or they produced it or whatever, it's like, you got to judge a song based on its thing.
Yeah. And I think like I would consider myself in a lot of ways kind of in the tribe that really goes hardcore against like Hillsong Bethel stuff. And what they want is like just pretty much hymns,
Yeah.
But the reality is like, if you study like a lot of the beliefs and lives of hymn writers, plenty of them, the guy who wrote It Is Well, ends up, he writes it because his wife and his kids die, but then he gets remarried and joins some sort of cult in Jerusalem that's like interfaith, and it's like
Horatio Spafford.
Yeah,
Wow.
and it's like, but there's all sorts of.
I've never met a Horatio that didn't go off the rails.
Amen, brother. Amen. But like Martin Luther, "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God." End of his life, he says some pretty anti-Jewish stuff that's cringy, but we don't discount what he did in the Reformation or the hymns he wrote. So it's kind of like, I don't know. We need to not have a double standard, right? And just pick on Hillsong and Bethel. There's plenty that we should be mindful of.
Hillsong Bethel apologist over here.
No way.
Okay, Billy.
And
I have some documentaries for you to watch.
I've watched them.
Ben's watched them, dude.
And again,
Ben has watched them and sent them to me.
Yes, I've watched them. And again, I've told Max, like, hey, I don't think we're so desperate for good music that we need to play a ton of these songs. So like, unless it's really, really good, and it fits, with what we're preaching, but I don't think we sing much at all of that.
A few thoughts. I think one is that like when I see a church's music set, because a lot of churches post them on social media, like here's what we're singing this Sunday or whatever, I feel like I can look at the combination of songs and fairly accurately tell you what style or type or ecclesiological model the church is, right? So to what you're saying, it's like if it's 5 Bethel Shwowy songs, to use something we used to say like 15 years ago. But if it's one of those, if it's like 5 of those in a row, it's telling you something about the church. I actually appreciate when I see those and it's like, oh, these are coming from very different streams, but like I can see the thread they're weaving there. It's really cool. Another thing that comes back to me is a lot of like Christian bloggers and stuff, like back in the day, would have this like little disclaimer on their Twitter account where it would say like a retweet is not an endorsement.
Yeah.
And so I think like singing a song from Hillsong is different than saying, hey people, go check out Hillsong. Hillsong is great. Whatever. And another kind of disconnected thought is that like just a reminder to people, and we've talked about it a little bit, is that like songwriting for the church is not like the movie Walk the Line. It is not Johnny Cash sitting with a guitar, like coming up with a song that then his voice is singing on the radio, that then his show is playing, that then the movie's made about him. It is like it's a machine where there are multiple songwriters in every room. They'll work on a song. They might not finish it. They might bring, oh, this guy's really good at melodic hooks and bridges. They'll bring in another songwriter, and they'll have splits where it's like, oh, this guy gets 20% of the royalties, this guy gets 40. National Styles, everyone in the room gets same, but like whatever. So there's that. Like that's a different thing. And so I have seen buddies of mine who are just in the camp of like, we're just not going to sing anything from Bethel or from Hillsong, and then I will see a song like on their church's playlist and be like, you don't know that the guitar player of a super sexual secular band is one of the 4 songwriters on that song. Mm-hmm. Like it's a song for the church. It did not come from a church that is heretical or questionable even, but one of the songwriters like legit like has music that you would not allow your kids to listen to because he's really good at one element of songwriting. Like he's good at it. And so they bring him in for it. And so like there's just that understanding. Now I do have a buddy whose church has gone to all of their music coming from like a common prayer. Like they only sing Psalms like straight from the Bible. Like all their music is now one of the 150 Psalms, like every week, every song. And it's like, all right, I guess if you're going to go down that road, you got to go that far. But then you're like, but do you know what David did? Like, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's good, Ty, that perspective on the songwriting and those kind of things, because I think and when you first asked that question, that retweets does not equal endorsements thing came to mind, and I do think there's a big difference between being in that tribe and really platforming it versus an occasional song, and that fits your doctrine, though everything in that world may not. And the last thing I'd say on this is just like, you see it online all the time on X, is the purity test guys, where it's like, I see these kind of tweets all the time. If your church is singing anything from Bethel or this, you need to go to another church, and it's like, it's all based upon the tribal identity of like, this narrow tribe here is all that we're going to pick from or whatever else, versus this and that. But then you have that narrow tribe and a key guy within that commits adultery, and then you're like, now what, dude? Now half your bookshelf's gone. Now what are you going to do? Like it. So I think like if you're driven by these overly purity test things rather than by biblical preaching on the local level, strong ecclesiology, qualified elders and deacons, prayer, God's word, discipleship, a biblical doctrine of conversion. And again, I'm like rattling through 9 marks of a healthy church stuff, but it's like, I think if you're driven by those type of peripheral things rather than the central things, like, you're going to be blown about. I know churches that are like that, purity test type churches that like, talk to me in 5 years and they've got a new tribe and a new focus and a new purity test that they're in. And you're like, dude, they're just missing the plot, I feel like. So if you are a part of those churches, I'm just kidding, throughout the purity test.
Well, and I think Carl Lentz is misunderstood. Like, he's not a creep at all.
Kenneth Copeland and Carl Lentz are your dudes.
All right. All we need is a Creflo Dollar reference to make this podcast complete.
All I know is if Jesus was here now, he would not be flying commercial. Okay, that's what Jesse Duplantis said.
Have a great week.